So it's election time in Russia, and they're making big hay of this. It's Putin's election, 15th to the 17th. They're going to do 3 days elections, and they've already done early voting. So let's look at a couple of articles and see what we can see here. Russia registers double the possible number of voters for Putin in occupied Ukraine. Well, how is that possible? Well, it's really not possible, but it kind of is if you're Russia and you have your minions working on your behalf in order to make sure that you succeed. Russia has registered 4.5 million possible voters in occupied parts of Ukraine, aside from Crimea. The number registered by Russia's Central Election Commission far exceeds the 3.2 million people in occupied parts of Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, Zaporizhia Oblast, whom Russia estimated had received a Russian citizenship by 1 January 2024. In all areas under Russian occupation, the occupiers are making it impossible to receive medical treatment, humanitarian aid, pensions without such citizenship. That's called coercion, while parents have been told that their children will be taken away and placed in children's homes if they are not enrolled in Russian occupation schools, which can only happen if parents take Russian passports. Okay, so right there, the election's invalid because you're coercing people into this. You want to have free and fair elections. People should be able to vote, not be forced into doing it by depriving them of things that they need to survive in order to be able to get them onto the rolls. The demographer estimates that the Central Election Commission's figure is around 80% higher than the actual size of the adult population, so I'm pretty sure Putin's going to win in these areas. In 2023, he notes the so-called Election Commission from Russia's proxy Donetsk People's Republic came up with percentages and absolute figures that clashed with each other. As a result, more people were claimed to have taken part in Russia's fake referendum in 2022 on joining the Russian Federation than were registered to be able to vote. Even if there were to be, or were Russia to pretend, 100% turnout in occupied Ukraine, the doctored results would only raise the percentages falsely claimed to have voted for Russian leader Putin by 1 to 2%. So why are they working so hard at this? Well, because each level in an authoritarian system, it works kind of like this. In an authoritarian system, each level is kissing the butt up or working, kissing the brass ring or whatever. So there's Putin, and then the top person in charge of elections and overall in Russia, and then the ones that's, his subordinate, and then the one over the occupied area, and then the one over a certain occupied area, a smaller subset, and all the way down the list. So that's probably what's happening. And they all want to please the boss, so they inflate the numbers all the way up, and the numbers get inflated all the way up, and there we are. Okay, as of March 14th, with fake early voting having begun on February 25th. Now, hear this. This is really interesting. The so-called Donetsk People's Republic claimed that turnout had already been, just because of early voting, 57.84%. This is before the actual 3-day election. Voting will continue until 17 March. Russia has tripled the number of armed enforcement officers accompanying such electoral commissions in comparison with its last fake elections on occupied territory in September of 2023. If in September such armed men were merely in uniform, now they're in full military gear together with machine guns, demonstrably upping the pressure. So, and you have to ask yourself, why do they care so much about going all out and in order to create the illusion of or the veneer, the look of free and fair elections, when we all know it's not free and fair elections, but they're making it appear as if that they really need to have. It's like somebody who really needs to have your opinion, like that you approve of them, even though you don't. It's that kind of thing. It's a really remarkable thing to watch. The result demanded by the Kremlin for this electoral farce, nor even the voting at gunpoint on occupied territory, are the main reasons why international community must not provide any credence to the alleged outcome. Yeah, they can't say that that was a legitimate election just because. Well, first the rolls are off, and then the men with guns and things along these lines. You just can't do that. Regardless of the numbers involved, Russia's holding of its elections in occupied Ukrainian territory means that they lack any legitimacy. So that's the other part. It's not their territory. As much as they claim to have taken it and had the elections that have proved that these people wanted to do that. They did it by force, so it's already null and void. So on multiple levels, these elections shouldn't count. I talked about this one yesterday, but it's worth doing again. Russians with machine guns ensure occupied Ukraine votes for Putin. Few will fail to vote for Putin when there's a fighter with a machine gun accompanying the ballot box. Right, so machine guns are the most effective form of election campaigning, but the occupiers appear to be bussing in voters from the Russian Federation as well, registering total strangers in the homes of people forced to flee after the Russian invasion. I asked, what will happen if I don't vote? The members of the election commission looked at me as if I was mad and asked, are you sure you want to do that? So that's kind of where we are with the election on the occupied territory within Ukraine. Now, this I thought was fascinating. This is a woman who is protesting in a Moscow election. Okay, so she's going to pour black ink into that. Okay. So that's her protest. She knows she's going to get, I mean, she's taken evidence. She knows she's going to get arrested for that. And I mean, that's pretty gutsy because she's in Moscow. She knows the bad things that are going to happen because she has done this. So yeah, I mean, that's where we are. Okay, last little bit. I saw this. I don't know who Miles Chung is, or Ian Miles Chung. Voting has begun in Russia 2024 presidential election, and every site is covered with surveillance. International observers are on site to ensure that there's no shenanigans. Oh, I'm sure there will be no shenanigans because international observers are there and because they're recording it. If Russia can do it, why can't America? Huh. Well, that's interesting. Instead of U.S. voting sites in 2020 barred Republicans Instead, U.S. voting sites in 2020 barred Republicans from observing the process, claiming it was voter suppression, and covered up windows with cardboard to prevent anyone from seeing what was going on when they covered their votes. Now, let's set that aside. They shouldn't do that in the United States. But does anybody really think that because they record people voting here, that ballot boxes are not being stuffed elsewhere, or showing up and it strains credulity to think that just because they've done this, and again, the big story here is that they do this veneer of legality, this veneer of elections in order to mask what everybody knows is a sham, but it's going to appear that way. Okay, at any rate, that's all that I have. Tell me what you think about what you saw about the elections. I mean, obviously, they're not legitimate, and they're not legitimate for this reason, that reason, the other reason, and then the other reason. Tell me what you think in the comments below. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to me. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and the coffees. Thank you most of all for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.